Hey guys, Furples here, bringing you the final table of the six-handed 1K guaranteed. I play MTTs probably more than I should. I'm definitely profitable in them because the field's really soft on Bovada, but I'm by no means an ICM wizard or some sort of MTT specialist. So I figured some of the spots in here, especially given the pay structure that I have on the right and some of the chip counts, made some ICM decisions pretty interesting. I figured I would just post this for some feedback, maybe spark some discussion. I'm only going to be showing my hands and then maybe one or two of the interesting hands that weren't my hands. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into it. Before I get into it, actually, we have about 25 big blinds in this hand, and there's a 10 big blind stack, and then, another 25 big blind stack and one big stack. So the first hand, we actually get a walk. So I don't know why I included that hand. And I'm just going to jump around. I'm just going to pause and then come back at the next hand. So the next hand, we have ace jack in the small blind. And it folds to the button, who opens just over 2x. He seemed like a pretty solid player. He'd been playing sort of tag, but he was opening pretty wide. And he seemed like he was playing a decent big stack. Like, he was opening extremely wide. I remember early in the tournament when he was at my table, 3 tables from the final table, and when he was a mid stack, he wasn't sort of punting chips, but it looks like he's adjusted and opening pretty wide. So this is a spot where I don't know if I'm supposed to call with 25 big blinds with ace jack here. It's such an ICM disaster when we get it in and he has pocket tens. We just lose so much dollar equity there, given the shorter stacks, and especially the 10 big blind stack. So I wasn't really sure how to approach this. I guess there's only one small stack. It's not like there's 3 small stacks. So I guess it's not that much of a disaster. But I felt as if 3-bet shoving, I can't 3-bet shove 25 big blinds, and I didn't want to 3-bet fold. I didn't want to 3-bet call, so I didn't really know what to do. So I decided to call. And the big blind calls as well. Flop is ace 3-3 two-tone, and we check. Big blind checks. Player 2 bets half pot. It seemed pretty standard. He's going to c-bet this a lot with his range, and we don't have that many aces. We decided to call. I mean, raising here just doesn't make that much sense to me, and especially given the ICM stuff. So we call. Turn is an ace, so this is sort of like the nut card to check, just because, I mean, if we bet, it's not like he's going to call with that many worse hands, and leading this turn doesn't make any sense because he's going to continue with his aces, his threes, and his bluffs on the turn. So we might as well just check and let him continue with those. We decided to check. He bets half pot again. We call. I think at this point, he can be double barreling a lot, or putting on pressure as the big stack. He can't even have a 3. He could be value betting a 3, maybe planning to check back the river. And I don't think he's barreling with many draws, just because, our continuing range against draws just beats all his draws when he gets there. So I don't know. River is a king, and I suppose we could think about just jamming for half pot and hoping he has a hand like king queen that he maybe hero calls. But it's very hard for us to have a bluff after we check, call, flop, and turn. So we decided to check and then hope that he bluffs again. He checks, and we win a decent sized pot. All right, so the next hand's pretty interesting as well. We have ace queen suited, and the big stack opens from under the gun +1, and I didn't know if I should be 3-betting this. So the stacks have gotten a lot smaller, and now we have a pretty big lead as second in chips versus the other 4 players, and there's a 14 big blind stack, a 14 big blind stack, a 14 big blind stack, and then a 9 big blind stack. So I figure this is a spot where if I 3-bet and he jams, we just feel sick to our stomach because a flip is just awful. And I'm not an ICM expert. I don't even have ICMizer, so I don't know. But I feel like if we got it in with ace queen versus his ace jack, I think that might even be minus EV dollar wise. But I'm not positive on that. I just like don't want to flip when we're second in chips and have a pretty decent lead. Anyway, we decided to call for those reasons, but who knows? Maybe this hand is just strong enough to 3-bet get it in. I don't know. And the big stack, and the flop is 3-3-5, 2 hearts. A big blind calls as well, and player 2 c-bets like just under half pot. I decided to call again because if I raise and like he just jams with pocket eights, it's just disgusting. And I feel like calling, even if this wasn't a tournament, even if this was a cash game, I think calling has a lot of benefits. So we decided to call, especially because he's going to barrel on like a lot of aces and queens, because when we call, we can have hands like, I'm talking theoretically in a cash game. If we were like 100 big blinds deep, we could have hands like pocket sixes and pocket sevens. So he can barrel a lot of aces and queens, which is good for us. But anyway, the turn is a queen and he checks. We bet 1/3 pot. At this point, I'm just hoping to get him to call with a hand like ace 10 that we're just crushing. Or maybe a hand like pocket sixes, pocket sevens, something like that. He folds and we win the decent sized pot. So I think the decision here is whether or not we 3-bet pre-flop. I don't think raising the flop is a good idea. But anyway, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. This hand is the first elimination, I believe. Player 5 opens, which is weird that he opened with 14 big blinds from the button. Player 1 ships it for like 9 big blinds. Player 2 overships it, and then player 5 folds, which is disastrous for him when he has a lot of hands. But anyway, I'm not saying he should be calling it off there, but like that's one of the reasons why I don't think you can open a 14 big blind stack that often. And oh, actually he got rivered. I thought this was the first elimination. No, this was pretty tilting to watch because obviously we want a pay jump. So he ended up getting rivered, and I don't know why I included this hand in here. I thought it was an elimination. But anyway, I'll get to the next hand. So this is the pretty controversial hand that I'm not sure if I like yet. We're actually, at this point in the tournament, we have more chips than player 2, so we're currently the chip leader. Blinds are still 2.5k, 5k, so we have like 38 big blinds or something like that. And he has like 32 big blinds or something like that. He opens a 2x. I decide to 3-bet here because I feel like I can put a lot of pressure on him ICM-wise. And I also feel like I just, like, when he has ace 10 here, what does he do? I mean, if he, like, calls our 3-bet with ace 10, he's not going to flop an ace or a 10 very often, and we're going to win a lot on the flop. And I don't expect him to be floating me out of position, you know, given the fact that he's the second in chips and we're the big stack. So I figured I would get a lot of folds here. I didn't think he'd be 4-betting me very light, and I figured it would be an easy fold to a 4-bet. So I felt this was a good 3-bet spot. In hindsight, I think that because the blinds are just going to be shipping it in a decent amount, he shouldn't be opening that wide. I don't know if he's aware of that, but I did notice he was opening wide. So I 3-bet. The big blind jams, and this is one of the things that sucks about 3-betting, is that when it folds to us, we're getting ridiculous odds here, so we have to call. I mean, if he flips over ace king, and like we still call, just because we're calling like 30 to win 100. So we call, and he has ace king, and you know, not much of a sweat on the flop. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the 3-bet there. Maybe I'm just, you know, fancy play syndrome. Maybe I'm supposed to fold, or maybe it's a good spot to apply pressure. I don't know. So the next hand, basically we fold for 30 hands because we get garbage hands, and somehow no one manages to get eliminated. Like, people are just moving chips across the table without being eliminated, which is pretty tilting, especially because we went from being the big stack to being the half stack, or we went from having 190 chips to K chips to having like 80K chips. So we like halved our stack. But we're pretty shallow, so that's to be expected. Here, the big stack opens to 2x. Like I mentioned before, he'd been opening a lot. I felt with 15 big blinds, I had some degree of fold equity against his hands like ace nine. So I decided to jam. Maybe this is spew. He actually folded. He actually folded and then flashed me a king using the fold and show, like fold and show one card. So I think there's a pretty good chance he folded a better hand unless he had king three or king two. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I feel it's marginal. I don't think it can be that bad. Like, he might be like raise folding some hands. But anyway, I'll go to the next hand. Okay, so the next hand is like 20 hands later. Player 5 shoves with 5 big blinds. Player 6 calls, basically for half his stack. Player 2 overshoves. Player 6 calls again. And the cards don't get flipped over, which is weird immediately. But player 5 has aces. Player 6 has ace king, I think. And then player 2 has... No. Player 6 has eights. And then player 2 has ace queen of spades. So he flops... Player 2 flops huge. And I'm just praying for a spade. But unfortunately, nothing gets there. So in this three-way all-in, nobody gets eliminated. Which is very sad for us. This hand, I don't really have any analysis for this hand. I think it seems pretty standard. I mean, if I'm player 6, I'm probably just jamming. But I don't know. I just put this hand in here because it seemed very sad for me. A couple hands later, it folds to us in the small blind, and we jam Jack 10 for like 8 big blinds, 8.5 big blinds. I don't think I have I don't think if he has a hand, we have any fold equity at all. I think if he has like ace 3, he's probably calling here. But I think for 8 big blinds, I think we do well enough against like random cards that he folds enough. But I think it's marginal. I don't know. I don't think I'd shove Jack 8 here. But, who knows? Like, I'm sure some MTT player is going to tell me this is a snap shove. So maybe, there's not a lot of thinking about it. But anyway. Next hand. Okay, so this hand was sort of weird. The player with... I hate having to do math on the spot. The player with like 7 big blinds decides to limp under the gun. Like, alarm bells are definitely ringing. And I was planning on just checking instead of jamming. But player 2 calls, which means that if we jam here, we increase, and everyone folds, we increase our stack by like 20%. That being said, I don't think we have any fold equity against player 4. But I figured like maybe he was trapping with like jacks or 10s maybe. So I felt as if he has ace queen. I felt as if he has ace king, aces, and kings a lot. But we're just getting too good of a price to jam. We're getting too good of a price to not jam. So especially when player 2 calls and puts another big blind of dead money in. So we decide to jam. He calls. Player 2 folds, and we get it in against kings and we lose. So I don't know how I feel about this one, but like, it's weird because maybe we're supposed to check and then like check fold this board when he bets. Like, that seems really silly for 7 big blinds. So I'm really not sure. We didn't have any reads on player 4. He was playing sort of tight. So I guess maybe when the tight guy limps under the gun, it's like always aces and kings. But honestly, like a lot of randoms at these stakes will just like limp under the gun with pocket 6s here. So I really wasn't sure. So the next hand, we have ace 6 with less than 10 big blinds. Somehow, all of these players have had less than 8 big blinds at some point, but now they're all at a decent stack and we're the short stack, which was pretty tilting. Player 5 opens under the gun. It folds to us. Player 5 had been opening quite a lot, and I figured that he was bad enough to fold here sometimes. I think I'd seen him make a pretty tight fold. Like, I think player 5, I think I had a note on him. I don't remember. I think I had a note on him that said, like, folded pre-flop in a spot where he has to call with any 2 cards. Like, I think I saw player 5 and player 6 get in spots where they would put in half their stack and just fold. Or, like, somebody with 5 big blinds would jam. or like 4 big blinds would jam and they would just fold their big blind, getting like 2.5 to 1. So with that being said, I figured I had to jam here because there's 26K in the middle. We have 50K. And I figured ICM doesn't apply that much because we're the shortest stack. I thought it was a profitable jam. I think it's very villain dependent, and it's hard for anyone to judge without actually being there and seeing the player. But we decided to jam. He calls with King 10, and unfortunately we don't win. So we actually get eliminated in 6th, which is, pretty unfortunate given that at one point we were sort of the chip leader and we were second in chips for most of the MTT. But that's how it goes. I guess the hands I'm most interested in getting feedback are the ace 3-bet hand, whether we should be 3-betting that ace queen suited hand, and then this hand, and then also the king queen hand. I think the other hands were pretty standard, but I thought there were some relatively interesting spots. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and hopefully I can maybe learn some things about MTTs.